So on the last Let's Talk About, I decided to have a poll where I would make everyone else decide what they wanted to hear from me. I'm not doing any of them. I'm also not aerobian-angel, but it's taken a while, and so here I am with this brand new one. So on the last episode, we all talked about setting a staple. What makes Sonic Sonic? What is the most unique part of Sonic the Hedgehog that makes him such a fantastic game series? So the thing is, when I was watching that video again, just to make this brand new one, I thought to myself, I really have changed in the past 3 years. Despite there being numerous articles about Sonic the Hedgehog being about momentum and how your skill rewards you with speed and all that other bullshit that a bunch of fucking people circle jerk about it, they're wrong. Sonic the Hedgehog has always been about its advanced combat system, and let me get some games to point it out. Now, no game in the series for sure has really had this standard when it came to combat, but some games just made that the whole theme. Case in point, Sonic 3D Blast. This is a fantastic game if you haven't played it. The fact that Sonic always feels like he's on ice is just wonderful, That's the kind of skill we really need in a Sonic game. Anyway, the whole point of this game is that you need to destroy enemies to get the flickies out. Essential, right? Like, Sonic's all about saving forest critters. Here's a game where that's all you do. It makes sense. The main issue is they're stuck with Sonic's traditional moveset. Oh, you have to jump on enemies. Oh, you have to roll into them. Oh, you could use your momentum to hurt them. Yeah, how about you go momentum these nuts on your chin? Here's the real deal. This shield right here, the homing attack shield. I don't know if that's what it's called, but this shield is the real deal. What this does is you don't have to do any of that pesky aiming bullshit. Instead, Sonic will just home in on an enemy and kill it. Perfect! That's real fast. I don't need to use my brain to think. Perfect. This concept of combat has only accentuated further in the Sonic Adventure games, with finally Tails and Knuckles and everyone else having actions that help. Sonic for sure has the biggest upgrade of all, having the homing attack natively. This makes all his attacks super fast. He can also charge up his spin dash to do the light speed attack, which lets him kill every enemy really fast. No thought required. Tails and Knuckles also get some upgrades too. They all have these new moves where they can finally go through enemies without having to bother, standing around and fighting them. Oh, there's an enemy up there? I'll just hit B, roll into a ball. It's like 3D Blast, but it works. And of course, we always have the Chad Big the Cat coming in here, and he's saying, I got a fishing rod. He'll just fucking hit you with it. Fucking finally, someone finally made a Sonic character with some balls. Then we have Amy Rose, who uses her hammer. This is a thing that was introduced more in the classic games, but they decided to bring it back for this one. Amy can use this hammer when she's running fast to do a hammer jump, and she'll go really high, and who cares about that platforming bullshit? There's this fucking asshole chasing you in all levels. Just hit him! Just get him out of there! Get out of there, you! And then, of course, there's the man himself. The man, the myth, the legend, Gamma. Someone at Sonic Team finally just snapped. They just said, it's time. They gave a fucking Sonic character a gun, and damn it, that's what we needed. Every time I play a Sonic game, I'm like, why doesn't Sonic have a fucking 9mm? And here we go. We finally have a Sonic character with a gun. What makes Gamma's combat so unique is that when you hit a bunch of enemies at once, you get this massive time bonus. Which is great, that really encourages people to actually get these high combos. Not only that, Gamma has some slower platforming to him, yada yada, whatever, but he has a gun! That is what we need in Sonic. And then in the sequel, Sonic Adventure 2, they decided to expand the combat a little bit. Now if Sonic needs to hit anything, he can just do a somersault, which, cancels all his momentum, but, it's okay, it's fine. No problem. He also has the bounce attack, which he can use on slopes to actually make the game more fun, but, who cares about that? You can somersault. Finally, we got some good shit going on here. Sonic can still do the spin dash like he could in Sonic Adventure, but whatever, who cares? Also, that homing attack. Woo! That's some good shit. They did a great job on that one. The gun gameplay finally returns, and this time they gave it to Eggman. They finally gave Eggman a gun. Oh, that's what... Whew. I can't believe it. It took him that long to just have Eggman point a gun at Sonic and be like, fuck you, you blue bitch! Anyway, Tails and Eggman. That's right, Tails. Tails has a gun now because they finally get to teach kids about gun safety. A pretty important problem in Japan. This time, instead of focusing on hitting multiple targets to get time so you don't lose the stage, this time it's all about score because the game grades you. They really had to put that shit in there just so you'd hit multiple targets. But that doesn't matter. The point is these characters are much worse than Gamma, because Gamma's awesome, these guys are nerds, but it is kind of cool to have an 8-year-old packing some fucking heat. Knuckles and Rouge also have the ability to punch and kick, respectively. When Knuckles and Rouge are moving too, they'll be able to do those moves unimpeded, which is pretty nice. But that's not the point. We don't need the convenience. We need to have some epic Devil May Cry shit going on in here. This game doesn't really have it. But you know what game does? Oh, I'll give you a hint. It starts with an H. That's right. It's H Sonic Heroes. Starts with an H, doesn't it? So with Sonic Heroes, this is where we hit this giant pinnacle of combat in Sonic games. This is where the real deal finally fucking hits. This is the Rusty's Real Deal baseball of gaming. So in this game, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all team up, along with many other characters teaming up. They even brought back the Chaotix. What a great thing. So here's the whole deal with this game. It's all about the fucking combat. You have to pick these characters, you have to fire with these characters, you have to shoot them. First of all, every character basically has a gun. Now, they don't have a real gun except for Omega, of course. Badass, by the way. Remember, all Sonic games have good mech designs. It's unequivocally powerful. Well, except for Sonic Forces, but I guess the Wisp Bombs are cool. Anyway, we're not there yet. This is where the series shines the most when it comes to combat. Enemies have health bars, you have to stop and take your time to fuck them up. You can switch between characters all the time, but you're gonna stick in power formation because that's the only thing that can basically kill most enemies in one hit. But that isn't what's important. What's important is that the game is really fun because it has really good combat. Who cares about the fucking platforming bullshit, all the crazy speedrun-esque tier tricks that you can do? Who gives a flying fuck? The game's about the combat, and man, it shines here. Taking a few pages from the greatest game ever made, Devil May Cry 3, Sonic Heroes, despite being 2 years earlier, decides to implement a lot of features that this game has. Just like in Devil May Cry, when you hit the B button, you'll be able to do some specific style. Likewise, on the GameCube, if you hit B, you'll be able to do a specific move as Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles, along with all the other teams. This is a huge improvement because now you can switch between them on the fly. It had style switching like in Devil May Cry 4 way before any Devil May Cry game had it. And not only that, just like the styles in the actual game, you'll be able to actually level them up. So with that, you can level up the styles, aka the characters in the game, and you have this finesse combat system that's so flexible and robust. One of the greatest things about the styles is that if you level up the speed style, you'll be able to just disarm enemies in general. Yeah, get rid of that stupid shield with just a simple homing attack. Perfect game design, in all honesty. As well, when you're in flying style, you'll be able to take down enemies that are flying above you, but sometimes they don't die. If you don't want them to, that's fine, because then you can stun lock them and get them into a really sick combo. This is best seen with the bosses. Now, I kind of skimmed over the bosses in the other games because they don't really add too much, but this game makes you think. In some games, you have to fight with teams, and these teams can level up their styles too, which makes them way harder if they actually get leveled up. So you have to get all the levels before they do. Not only that, the bosses with Eggman are great because they have the best focus of speed and combat altogether. Eggman runs away, you fight him. Perfect stuff, really. And the thing is, Sega wouldn't try this combat system for a very long time. But coincidentally, the same year, there was something just as magical that came out. Finally, someone at Sega just said, fuck it, you know, you guys keep saying it's about combat, make a game that's just about combat! They did it! They finally did it! Sonic Battle came out around the same time as Sonic Heroes, and it's a fan-fucking-tastic game. Boasting repeated battles in the middle of storylines, extremely unnecessary difficulty spikes, and having so many repeated enemies that it doesn't get old, it is a fantastic game to play, and definitely one of the prowesses to show off the combat of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now you may be saying, what about Sonic the Fighters? That was a game based on combat too. Yeah, Sonic the Fighters was an alright attempt, but it didn't really show off what was Sonic, you know? When you look at that game, yeah, there's spin dashing, and half the characters can do it. There's no uniquity to it. Sonic the Fighters, despite being an actual fighting game, isn't really as unique as Sonic Battle is. In Sonic Battle, every character has a 3-hit combo, and not only that, they also have styles that they can choose from. You have Shot Style, where you're able to make a projectile go forward. You also have Power Style, where you're able to do a devastating blow as long as someone's close to you. You also have Set Style. Set Style lets you plant bombs, and these can make for some really sick combos in the middle of the game. Not only that, but the styles change depending on if you're in the air or not. Some styles change tremendously. Sonic's power move, for example, you have to aim when you're on the ground, but if you're in the air, you just do a bounce attack. Truly, it's gonna be a while before Sega can top this, and it was. In between a lot of games, we had some other attempts at trying to retroactively fix the combat system. It was fine in Heroes in Battle, but they decided, oh, well, you know, fuck that. So eventually what happened is we got Shuttle the Hedgehog, where they finally said, alright, he's not Sonic, but we're gonna give him a gun. And they did! Shadow does have a gun, and it's great. The problem is when you're zooming past enemies and firing at them, it's just not as fulfilling, you know? Plus, there's not that many styles. Like, yeah, you have Hero, Neutral, and Dark style, but they don't change anything. They just change what you're supposed to do. Not really that effective of a combat system. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 came by, and it was okay as well. It had something similar to Heroes where you had health bars, but the problem was it got rid of almost all the styles. It gave you some of the older moves from the adventure games, but other than that, there weren't really any styles to it. It was kind of like retrograding back to Devil May Cry 1 instead of 3 and 4. Not to say Devil May Cry 1 is bad, but to say that 3 and 4 are way better. Though what was great is they had plenty of enemy encounters that would be super unique and awesome. It's just so much more tame now because Sonic doesn't have styles. But then we get to the big one, you know, this is the one where they finally had some really nice combat, even without styles. So this was a really unique take. Sega decided to actually go back and make a more combat-focused Sonic game for once. The thing is, they still wanted to appeal to the weirdos that are like, oh, momentum, oh, my speed. And they made it so that Sonic during the day plays just like a normal classic Sonic game, which wasn't as intuitive. During the day, the combat still had some awesome homing attack chains, but most of it was just boosting into enemies. There are some enemies where you boost into them to actually damage them, which is very unique, but that's about it. But when you got to the Werehog, that's when things got really good. Sonic as a Werehog had a variety of combos, and many of these moves were very integral to the game. Using a light and heavy attack system, along with some grabs, it made for some really unique stuff. The thing is, Sega took a more God of War approach and decided to make it more about combos and button inputs. It's very similar to God of War or Bayonetta or something like that, where specific inputs lead to specific moves. The problem is, again, there's a lack of styles. Sonic doesn't really have any unique styles when you're playing this game, but that's okay because at least the combos add a lot of nice variety to it. Some of them in general have really good power punches to them. You know, if they just had styles again, though, like imagine if Werehog had Shot or Pow style and Set style. Like, man, those were some unique stuff in battle. But to say that there hasn't been any improvement is quite a lie, especially after the previous games. But what's so weird about these games is that no matter how far they regress, they never go further than the adventure games. Which is kind of nice because those are improvements to combat. But now we get to a dark age where they tried, but things failed. So this is where things get a little bit more weird. Sega didn't like the Werehog, and some people didn't like it either, and they're like, oh, Big the Cat's a better character. Well, you know what? That's still Sonic, so you're a fucking asshole. Regardless, they didn't really improve the combat after that. They tried to reintroduce styles with Sonic Colors with the Wisps. They kinda work, but the problem is a lot of them are more platforming orientated, which doesn't help out too much in Colors' case. Colors isn't that much different, besides for some nice cinematic moments, it doesn't have that much of a combat focus. Generations 2 that one didn't really have combat either. It was much the same as it was in Unleashed, with some added benefits of a few little homing attack chains that aren't that bad. Besides the bosses being pretty good, there wasn't really that much in the terms of combat. Like, yeah, Sonic Generations had a fantastic level design and great momentum and all that other weird shit people think about when they think about Sonic, but in combat it was lacking a little bit. Finally, though, we get to Sonic Lost World, where they decided to actually add some depth this time. And it really wasn't that good. They changed the homing attack so you have to really, like, aim at all the enemies before you hit them and stuff, and it's really weird now. It doesn't work. And not only that, while you're doing that, you're able to do a kick. This kick lets you push enemies forward and adds some much needed depth, but that's about it. Sonic Lost World's combat isn't really as intuitive. Like, yeah, there's some platforming and the boss fights are okay, but that's about it, really. But then finally, Sega decided, we need to actually start listening to these people. They're clamoring for combat, and combat is what we need to give them, which they did then. Sonic Forces finally came out, and we finally got a really okay combat system this time. It wasn't as good as Unleashed, it wasn't as good as Heroes, it wasn't as good as Battle, but it was finally something competent. Someone at Sega finally decided to give a shit about the combat again, and we finally got some more combat orientation in Sonic Forces. Yeah, classic Sonic was back and he sucked way more dick than he did in, Generations. And modern Sonic existed and had the same stuff. There was an emphasis of more combat, but it wasn't much different than Generations. Forces had the Avatar, however, and the Avatar had some pretty unique stuff behind him. So the first thing with the Avatar is that the Avatar had weapons. They finally gave another Sonic character guns. Like, sheesh, why does it take so long for this shit? Anyway, what made this one unique is the fact that the Avatar, when it started, was okay. You had something, but then stuff started coming in where you could really change how the Avatar was. You see, you could start getting weapons that had different properties to them. Like if you'd hit the ground, you'd start running. But then even after that, they added the rental hero mode, where you could make either another avatar or have someone else's avatar, and you'll be able to play through the game and switch between these avatars at will. This was kind of like style switching, but not only that, it had styles with perks to it. It was such a really unique system that made way for some, well, I guess you could say it benefited the platforming as much as it did the combat. It added some new options for you to take out enemies, which was really nice. The only problem is the cube weapon wasn't really all that interesting. Also, great idea having the wisps be the primary thing for the guns. That's a really, that's so smart. That's one of the things that Colors tried to do, but they finally said, make them guns! And it worked. So the thing that's really weird is, why is Sonic so hesitant on staying combat focused? Is it because of those obnoxious fans that keep saying it's about momentum and speed is the skill that's a reward and all that crap? It's just one of those weird things where it's like, the combat in these Sonic games can be really fire, like even comparisons to the greatest ones like Devil May Cry and God of War and Bayonetta, and it's like, what the hell's going on here? Why haven't we made more combat-focused Sonic games? I think it's because Sega's scared. They know the audience is there for the speed, but you can make the combat fast. Sonic could definitely benefit from being more like Devil May Cry, but again, that's just all of an opinion. But maybe with Devil May Cry 5 coming out, Sega will change their mind and make more combat-focused Sonic games. We'll have to find out and see. But of my opinion, I would have to say that Sonic needs to have more combat to it. There needs to be styles, there needs to be like kick style or boost style and shit like that. It would just make more sense. I don't know why they haven't done anything like that. Regardless, it just goes to show that the history of combat in Sonic games has always been such a great road, but a rocky one. I mean, that's the whole narrative thing of Sonic, is that Sonic's all about freeing enemies. You'd think Sega would probably buckle down and make more combat-focused Sonic games, but I guess not. It's a very weird system, but hopefully Sega will learn from their mistakes. What's great is at least Sega keeps trying. I wish they wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater with a lot of these situations. It would just be so awesome to see Sega actually expand upon one of these combat systems. Sonic Battles for sure. Oh man, that is so robust. Imagine something like that, but with like the Werehog, or taking something like the Avatar and even expanding upon that and making it so that you can switch guns and characters. Ah, jeez, there's so much potential. Anyway, my point about all this is that Sonic has always really been about the evolution of combat. And while I do think that Sonic games haven't really been as good as their former, I mean, 2004 was like this weird holy grail of heroes and battle coming out, where all these crazy good Sonic games with amazing combat all happened to come out. It's really weird. And the thing is, it just makes me wonder, why hasn't Sega really experimented with it? I know I said at the beginning that Sonic's always been about this all momentum and how speed is a reward for skill and all this, but the combat, you know, that's a really important part. You know, Sonic's about freeing animals from the robots. I don't think there's any reason for Sega to really throw that all out, you know. Having everything just be degraded to a boost and only having some spectacle when you're with boss fights is just one of those things that makes Sonic not as good as it used to be. Those robust combat systems that would even make Devil May Cry jealous back in the day, of course. They didn't have this stuff. It's just one of those things where it's so surprising that Sega hasn't really expanded on this. Oh well, maybe there's hope for the future. After all, as I said, Devil May Cry 5 came out. Sega might learn their lessons and they might actually make some great stuff.